Thank you for watching Conscious Consumer Network. The live stream broadcast is free to view. You can pause and rewind live broadcasts to catch up, or view shows at a later date by accessing our free archives of all shows. Check out our broadcast guide to see what's on. You can show your support by donating to our network support fund. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or subscribe to the monthly newsletter for updates. We thank you for supporting free and independent media. Hey, my name is Mel Ve, coming to you live on Conscious Consumer Network this Wednesday evening. Thank you for tuning in. It is 7 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. That makes it 8 p.m. here in Central Europe. And of course, tonight we have an episode of Dragonology. This, of course, being Season 3 of Dragonology. So if you've missed Seasons 1 and 2, please do go check it out, because most of Season 3 won't make sense until you've actually followed along. This is Episode 5 of Season 3, and some of the basic themes we're going to be covering off tonight fall into the study of Dragonology. We've touched on some of this before, but what's always interesting is to build upon the knowledge we've already gained by exploring the extended symbols, language, etymology, and general applications of words. And through doing this, we're able to decipher the deception of the draconian matrix. Starting at the very top, you'll notice this goes down a very nice little pyramid. No, that was not intentional. But we're going to be dealing with one of the most commonly referenced entities or groups of beings when we're talking about extraterrestrial, perhaps gods, creator gods. They come up in the Sumerian tablets and are commonly referenced as the Anunnaki. We're also going to be looking at the concepts of judgment and hell, as well as fertility rituals, then going into the Ark of the Covenant, symbolism related to that, following up by a journey into looking at symbolism related to serpents, particularly poisonous serpents, and finishing off with ethnogenic substances in rituals. So quite a full schedule tonight. So it's going to be an interesting travel through this particular subject of Dragonology. But before we get in there, I just want to do a little recap as to why we study Dragonology. It's to decode the symbolism of the dragon. And symbolism is primarily used as a mechanism of subterfuge to mask the existence of the dragon. However, evidence of the dragon's existence is interwoven into the very fabric of our reality. This is especially evident upon the examination of etymology, which reveals dragon root words and symbols hidden in all languages. The key to deciphering the deception of the dragon is in knowing how words and language fit together, why certain rules of grammar apply, and when. For example, certain letters replace other letters at certain times, and we have been talking a bit about this throughout the time that we've been doing Dragonology, and we call this transliteration. And this is when, and commonly a very good way to think of the field of transliteration is to have a look at what I call the Latin languages, which is all the languages that come from Latin. That's most of the European languages, so English, Portuguese, Dutch, even Afrikaans, which is a derivative of Dutch, even many of the sort of native African languages which are written with the Roman alphabet, Spanish, and so forth. Most of these languages have the same basic rules of transliteration which apply, and often you'll find, for example, words in English and Dutch will have these very specific transliterations and rules that apply, and we have gone through this before. But just to recap, and I have added a few more transliterative letters and consonants so that you guys can understand exactly how this works. Of course, A, E, I, O, U, and Y are generally interchangeable with each other, and of course these are your vowel sounds, okay? They're generally interchangeable with each other, but not exclusively. You do have, for example, the I and J sound, which are interchangeable. So I, the vowel sound I, is sometimes interchangeable with the consonant J. But in general, apart from this one, there may be one or two others that I haven't found yet, but in general, the vowels only transliterate with each other. And of course, why? Being very curious, because It's not generally thought of as a vowel, but used as a vowel. And of course, we've spoken a lot about the D, J, and G transliteration. We'll do a bit more of that tonight as we go into dealing with dragonology. And of course, then the G and the H sometimes transliterate. What's interesting to notice is sometimes transliteration actually will happen between two letters in the alphabet that are very close together. For example, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. G and H are right next to each other. H, I, J, K. H and K are not too far from each other. L, M, N. M and N are very close to each other, and so forth. So sometimes transliterations happen between letters which are right next door to each other. And for example, the letters C and S and T, when phonetically said, often have the same sort of phonetic quality, the S or the T or the Ch. They all kind of work in that same sort of phonetic vibration. And then, of course, F and V, which is one of my favorites because I always use the Volkswagen analogy. Because if you say it like an American, you say Volkswagen. But if you say it like a Dutchman or a German, you say Volkswagen, which shows you how the F and the V transliterate and how the V and the W transliterate. Of course, in the Germanic Dutch languages, the W sounds phonetically like the English V for victory. Okay. So that's the basis of transliteration, and as we go through dragonology, we will be building on this and adding to it so that each week you get an understanding that is continually built from a strong foundation of knowledge. All right, so going from transliteration and diving straight into the origins of everything really, starting tonight at the point of the dragon gods. In many cultural mythologies across the world, it is said that serpents or dragon gods or deities actually taught humanity various crafts and skills. Now, what is actually known about us prior to serpent or dragon god intervention in human existence on planet Earth? Very little is known. The simple reason being is because humanity was never in a position to write or read, and therefore didn't record things. The record of things seem to have started at the various creational mythologies, Genesis, the origins. That's where things seem to start. And this is in every cultural mythology across the world. In fact, almost all of them that have the whole concept of Ophiolatry masked behind various cultural allegories. So prior to these sort of dragon gods coming to humanity, we were supposedly basic hunter-gatherers. And you just had to look at some of the most primitive tribes of Africa, the Hottentots and the Khoi or the San, to get an understanding of, when you look at them, as to how we must have been prior to serpentine intervention. Okay. And that is basically people who lived off the land, and when the weather's changed, we moved where it went warmer so that we could pick fruit from trees and eat them. We weren't really abreast of the skills of agriculture. Most likely, we're probably largely vegetarian. Meat eating is something that was introduced to us by the dragons, as is the arts of cooking and food preparation, etc., which is all part of the ritual concept. So humanity was very basic. As I said, the best analogy is to have a look at what we call the Bushmen or the San, the Khoisan, the Hottentots of Southern Africa, the nomadic pastoralist type lifestyles they lead now. To a certain extent, probably not even agriculturalists, but just nomadic tribes type people. And then suddenly something changed. And this is only really notable when the arts of writing and reading were bequeathed to humanity, because then suddenly there's a written record which we can reference, even if it's a painted record or a symbolic pictorial record, some kind of a lexicon which alludes to something in the mind of the person that created it. From then on, we kind of have a history. From then on, you kind of got architecture, mathematics, and knowledge, which come into being. As I said, we were taught hunting, fishing, and agriculture, farming by the dragons. The knowledge of astronomy. In fact, all ritual practices such as dance, theatre, music, sport, and most modern-day pastimes are rooted in ritual origins, are all attributed to the dragon gods or deities. This is where it's all rooted and where it all came from. An example of this, of course, in Egyptian history, religion, mythology, dragonology, whatever you want to reference it or label it as, is the god Thoth. And you commonly get this specific god that in every specific cultural mythology across the world. In South America, you got Quetzalcoatl, a similar story to Thoth, which is, Thoth is obviously the Egyptian version of Quetzalcoatl, and Thoth is the Egyptian god that was credited with creating hieroglyphics, the symbolic pictorial type writing that the Egyptians have become famous for. And of course, hieroglyphics was evolved into writing. And then, of course, hieroglyphics being pictorial can be considered to be a form of art. And as we've seen, what art has developed into, and just have to look at the great masters of the Renaissance to get an understanding of just what incredible skills these human beings have evolved and been able to develop as a result of dragon intervention. Now, this mythology of dragon gods, particularly, which is very common in Egyptian mythology, Thoth, bringing the skills of writing, reading, arts to humanity, it's consistent throughout the world. Everywhere, it's kind of like, okay, these dragon gods came, we weren't very civilized, and they started to teach us things. They taught us to read, to write, taught us maths, astrology, how to build temples. They gave us writing, they gave us art, they gave us all sorts of crafts, and suddenly we developed a culture. Okay, we were being cultured by dragon gods to develop a culture very much within a draconian matrix, an artificial draconian construct. Society as it is today is very much an artificial dragon-threaded construct. Now, as we spoke about last week, it's not just Thoth that is one of these supposed gods that bequeath the gifts of writing and reading and arts to humanity. The Berossus account of Oannes, and I did go through this last week, I shall go through it again, just to draw the similarities between the two. Oannes is described as a man, or rather a monster, half man and half fish, coming from the sea, appeared near Babylon. He had two heads, one which was the highest, resembled that of a man, the other that of a fish. He had the feet of a man and the tail of a fish, and his speech and voice resembled that of a man. A representation of him is still preserved. This monster dwelt by day with men, but took no food. He gave them knowledge of letters, arts, and science. He taught them to build towers and temples and to establish laws. He instructed them in the principles of geometry, taught them to sow and to gather fruits from the earth. In short, whatever could contribute to polish and civilize their manners. At sunset, he retired to the sea in which he passed the night. There appeared likewise others of the same species. And of course there was. They appeared in Egypt, and they appeared in the Sumerian tablets. So this is, of course, the Oannes. And you've got the story of the Anunnaki, which come up in the Sumerian tablets, which talk about the same thing. So it's all over the show. Of course, as we said already, Quetzalcoatl in South America, Mesoamerica, and all over the world. This mythology is the same. These dragon gods came here and they gave us art, reading, writing, and that sort of thing, civilized us, so to speak. Okay, the Anunnaki. Now, I told you we're going to be dealing with the Anunnaki tonight, and of course, the Anunnaki are a group of deities in ancient Sumerian, Akkadian, Assyrian, and Babylonian culture. And the Oxford Companion to World Mythology has this to say about the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki are the Sumerian deities of the old primordial line, the old primordial line, okay? Now remember that. They are the chthonic deities of fertility associated with the underworld where they became judges. And of course, you'll notice the specifically colored words, which we're going to be exploring a bit more, because these words, what they do is allude to the themes that we keep coming up in Dragonology over and over and over again. And it's interesting to see how when you begin to understand what the language means, that you can pick up on these basic key themes and key root words, and then begin to to be able to understand when dragon gods and stuff are being referenced and not just hidden behind symbolic and language allegory. So first dealing with the word primordial. All right, the word primordial comes from the 14th century late Latin word primordialis, meaning first of all, like coming first, firstborn, the original, the genesis. As we said, when we talk about the dragons, this is where everything begins. It's the creation mythology, it's the genesis, it's the beginning, it's the origin, it's the commencement of what we know of us as our culture today. It's certainly not the story of humanity. There's probably a history that goes on long before draconian intervention. But there is definitely a sense of this is kind of when the recording of our history started, was when they taught us how to record things in terms of giving us the arts of script, writing, reading, literacy, and of course being marked as our origins commencement, because how you first record things when you don't know how to read and write, everything's sort of passed down in oral tradition, which of course over time can get lost and distorted. Primordialis, or primordial, references coming again, as I say, from the Latin word primordium, being the beginning. Dealt with the word origin and why it's so significant, the commencement, the genesis. That thing keeps coming up, and of course I use the Ouroboros because it references the beginning and the end, kind of like rebirth and regeneration as well. So the beginning effectively is the end, and that's a very common theme with Dragonology, which we'll go on to in a bit. And I do want to just take the word order from ordeal, because it is very significant, and it comes up a lot because people talk about the New World Order, and of course it's got a very common dragon root word. The OR is one of the most common dragon root words that we can find. So the word order comes from the old French word ordre, meaning position, estate, rule, regulation, or from the Latin word ordinem or ordo, meaning row, line, rank, arrangement. I love the word arrangement because you've got an angel root word in there, A-N-G-E, or routine. Okay, so you can kind of see what they're trying to do there is already here they're talking about a structure, order, primordial. Okay, it's the beginning of the structure that they've created for us, the order, the pattern, the program, the spell. Okay, because that's what the spells are. They are patterns. They are routine. Okay, it's a certain order in which they go. All right, the word chthonic. The word chthonic means in, under, or beneath the earth, subterranean. The translation of the meaning discusses deities or spirits of the underworld, especially in Greek mythology and religion. The Greek word chthon is one of several for earth, but typically refers to the interior of the soil rather than living on the surface of the land. So we're not talking about actually inhabiting the surface of the land, but the interior of the soil, so perhaps the underworld. And when you talk about chthonic deities, often I Google chthonic deities and Hades came up, okay, and here's a lovely bas relief of Persephone and Hades, and I've spoken about Persephone as well before in previous dragonologies being a seasonal deity, a fertility deity, which is why she's normally depicted with sheaths of wheat in her hand and sometimes holding serpents as well. In fact, I think you should probably see them crawling around the floor here, normally in depictions of her. Now, chthonic cults are very interesting because people, this is kind of where we start moving into the whole understanding of, okay, so the dragon gods gave us agriculture, dragon gods gave us the knowledge of gathering fruits from the earth and how to plant and how to sow, all that kind of thing, which is interesting because, as I said, chthonic actually references the earth, okay, and this is where it kind of ties in. Chthonic, which is a form of chthoni and chthonios, has a precise technical meaning in Greek, referring primarily to the manner and method of offering sacrifices to specific deities or gods. generally referred to as chthonic or chthonian deity. These include, but are not perhaps strictly limited to, Demeter and Hades in classical mythology. And of course, this is an Actic red figure from a sort of Greek pottery called a crater, or I'm not even sure what bit of pottery this is, but this is a depiction of an animal sacrifice. You can obviously see here's the fire, but that's what's being depicted here. And there's a reason for that. It's because sacrifice and fertility rituals are inextricably interlinked. Chthonic cults perform fertility rituals which involved votive offerings or sacrifices, okay, with the belief that these acts of ritual and sacrifice would bring prosperity, fertility, and a good agricultural season and harvest. Now, here's where I want to talk about how the dragons have kind of mind-controlled humanity. It doesn't matter how many oxen or babies I decide to slay over a satanic altar. It is not going to change the fact that my crops will or will not grow due to rain or drought. There is absolutely no correlation between the two, okay? Yet, people in ancient times, and this is such an, fertility rituals are the oldest of all rituals, specifically because most fertility rituals were dedicated to the chthonic cults, the deities of the underworld. When we talk about the underworld, yes, we're talking about Hades, we're talking about hell. So the devil, Satan, Lucifer, all those entities associated with the underworld. This is what fertility rituals are honoring. This is where it is honoring. It's honoring the earth and the deities of the earth and the underworld, which is why sacrifices are performed under the guise of being fertility rituals. Like I said, if there's a flood one year and a drought next year, it is absolutely not dependent on how many cows were sacrificed. It makes no difference. And people have for thousands of years absolutely believed that the sacrifice or ritual ceremony is necessary to influence agriculture, to influence fertility. Okay, these offerings, votive offerings and sacrifices were done with the belief that these acts of ritual and sacrifice would bring prosperity, fertility, and a good agricultural season and harvest. And for those who watched the interview I did with Professor Sheila Coulson from the University of Oslo in Norway, you remember that we looked at a ritual a site where ritual activity had been going on, dated at a conservative estimate to be at least 70,000 years old. Okay, we've identified a site where votive offerings were made to a serpent-like sculpture, which is very, very, very old. It is the oldest serpent ritual site or any ritual site that has ever been found. So this belief of ritual and sacrifice for the purpose of some gain, be it food, rain, harvest, fertility, whatever it is, this belief goes so far back, it's so inextricably interwoven into the very fabric of our reality. And there is a reason for this. The dragon gods got people to sacrifice to them to make them think that it would bring a good fertility or good harvest, which is not necessarily the truth at all. In fact, as I said, whether you sacrifice a baby or a cow or not, it's not going to change how many carrots grow out of the ground. Okay, maybe if you fertilize the ground with the leftovers of any carcass, maybe that'll help the fertility of the ground, but certainly not burning the cow on an altar to ashes. That doesn't determine how the rest of the field of wheat is going to grow. Yet, as I say, this is one of the oldest, these chthonic rituals, these chthonic cults which perform fertility rituals to the gods for prosperity and harvest. And again, this is, as you say, the gods gave humanity the gifts of reaping and sowing from the earth, gathering fruits, harvesting, agriculture, which is why we celebrate with agricultural harvest time rituals such as Easter and Halloween. It's in honor of the gifts given to humanity, in honor of the gifts of agriculture and knowledge given to us. That is what it is in honor of. It is honoring the dragon gods. Now, death and rebirth gods, as you spoke about already, the Ouroboros is one of the best symbolic allegories referencing the death rebirth cycle, of course, and the beginning being the end, being the beginning being the end. And so life goes. It is a constant cycle. We have winter after summer and then summer after winter, and we have day after night, night after day, and so it goes. Examples of gods who die and later return to life are most often cited from the religions of the ancient Near East and traditions influenced by them, including biblical and Greco-Roman mythology, and by extension, Christianity as well. The concept of the dying and rising god is merely a motif associated with fertility rituals surrounding the yearly cycle of vegetation. And of course, examples of such deities include, and these are rising, rebirth, they died and they're born again or whatever, Osiris, Tammuz, Adonis, Attis, Dionysus, and of course, Jesus Christ. All of them fit into the category of death rebirth gods. And of course, all of them are merely symbolic of the cycles of the year. And largely because a lot of them are actually most likely sun gods, because the sun is responsible for the seasonal cycles. And as we've proven over and over again, Dionysus and Jesus Christ were absolutely representations of sun god, definite sun god allegory. Okay, so the other word we wanted to look at was the word judge, which is very interesting, okay? There's so much symbolism relating to judge, I don't even know where to begin. First of all, just looking at this picture here, I'll get into that in a moment, but the word judge, all right, has three key transliterated letters, and not just any letters. It has the D, the J, and the G, or the J, the D, and the G in that order, judge. So you've got to know that this word has some impetus, okay? Now the scales, of course, is a very common symbol in Dragonology, as is the hammer, and we will deal with both of them in Dragonology in this episode. Now remember, the G, the D, and the J are absolutely interchangeable. Please go back and watch the previous episodes of season 3 to understand. We've built this up over several weeks. You can understand how significant this interchangeable letter grouping is and why it is significant that all three of those letters turn up in the word judge. Okay. As you said before, the D and the J is a serpentine root, okay? The Egyptian hieroglyphics for the English language phonetic expression dj, so j, is a cobra at rest. So that j sound is actually depicted in hieroglyphics as a cobra at rest. And of course, judgment, when we talk about judgment, here's the scale, as I said. This particular depiction shows the heart being weighed on the scale in the afterworld, I beg your pardon, in the afterworld. This is Anubis, and this is the feather of Mart. And the whole concept is that your heart had to be lighter than the feather in order to move on into heaven. And if it wasn't, you went into hell. And there's all this kind of allegory associated with judgment. And of course, it's nice to see sort of nice hybrid dragonology type creatures, bird humans. Anyway, they're always kind of tucked away in there. But a central theme of all religions rooted in Ophiolatry is what happens to people upon death. Almost all religions are greatly devoted to the afterlife, emphasizing that what you do in your current life affects what happens to you in your afterlife. This usually takes the form of judgment by some underworld or afterlife deity in which one's deeds and characteristics in life determine either punishment or reward. Hades was the ancient Greek chthonic god of the underworld, which eventually took his name. So not only was he a person, hell was actually referenced in ancient Greek mythology as Hades. In Greek mythology, Hades was regarded as the oldest son of Cronus and Rhea and the brother of Zeus and Poseidon, who defeated their father's generation of gods known as the Titans and claimed rulership over the cosmos. Hades received the underworld, Zeus the sky, and Poseidon the sea. The Etruscan god Aita, along with the Roman god Dispater, which became Saint Peter, when pantheism changed to monotheism under Roman Christianity, and when Constantine declared Christianity as the official religion of Rome, Dispater became St. Peter. So the Etruscan god Aita, along with St. Peter, Dispater, Orcus and Pluto, were eventually taken as the equivalent to the Greek god Hades. So what they're saying is St. Peter, okay, was actually taken as the equivalent to Hades, who was sort of the god of the underworld. Is that not interesting? That tells you a lot about what the Vatican is. There's more allegory towards the Vatican as we carry on. Hades was often depicted with a three-headed dog, Cerberus, which is interesting. The dogs turn up quite a lot in Dragonology. Of course, we've just had a look at the the Anubis, which is the Egyptian god depicted as a dog. So the hounds of hell, also another very common theme when you're talking about the underworld. So these are, of course, the Romanized equivalents to the Greek god Hades. This is, of course, the Gardens of Bormazio, which was created by the Pier Orsini in the, I think, 17th century. Also called the Garden of Mysteries or Garden of Monsters. Lots of interesting Dragonology-related sculptures in this garden. I'm absolutely dying to go see it. And, of course, this is a sculpture of Pluto, or Pluton, as he was sometimes also known. Basically, they would be the equivalent of the devil, but the Romanized versions, and I'm talking about pre-Christianity Romanized versions. And of course, there's some various depictions of hell that are all very, very interesting. And this, if anyone has recently seen Inferno, the latest Dan Brown vehicle, you will have seen or may be familiar with this particular painting by Sandro Botticelli, which depicts the 9 circles of hell in this very interesting artwork. It's not very, very clear, the detail in here, but it's got a heck of a lot of detail going on. Didn't want to say it's got a hell of a lot of detail. Anyway, artworks of hell are very common all over the show. You tend to find them like just about everywhere. Things, people are very obsessed with this particular theme, and some of them are very gruesome. This particular one's got some very gruesome scenes. Commonly, you'll find snakes, obviously, serpent mythology, serpentine symbology, very common in Dragonology. This looks like people eating entrails, or people eating each other. This one here, you've got people being boiled in a bath. Here you've got a demon with horns eating people. I mean, it's really the worst kind of imaginable, horrors and ugliness all going on here. The Last Judgment, Hell, comes from a 1431 painting by Fra Angelico. And this is a fresco in the medieval church of St. Nicholas in Rajul, Bulgaria. And over here you can see the scales, as we spoke about already, talking about hell and judgment. So the scales are a very common symbol of this particular area of Dragonology. You're talking about judgment and the underworld. And much like, and I do want to go back to this, the Orcus, one of the counterparts of the Orcus is the Christianized version of Orcus being Hellmouth, okay? But Orcus is also one of those things where it's all about the mouth and being eaten by it. And you've got the same thing with Hellmouth, which is obviously a giant gaping mouth, presumably of a dragon consuming people, okay? And of course, the depictions of hell turn up in every religion. It's not just, as we say, Christianity and ancient mythology. We're looking at hell as a common focal point of afterlife punishment in every religion. For example, Hinduism, there's some various depictions of, again, lovely winged, horned beings, jinn, angelic, serpentine-like beings. We've got snakes, we've got sacrifice, we've got torture, we've got all sorts of means of punishment and torture going on in these lovely pictures. That's the Hindu version of hell. And then, of course, the Jainist version of hell is not any better. You got like spikes and things poking through people being burned, torn to bits by dogs. Yeah, lovely. So basically, it's no matter what religion you're in, hell is hell. That's all I can say. The Last Judgment by Hieronymus Bosch, one of my favorite artists. His works are just so intensely busy, it's almost impossible to keep up with everything going on in them. But there are some beautiful little delights of symbolic richness always hidden in his artwork, and most particularly in his artwork entitled The Last Judgment. And yeah, it's as well, lots of horror and gore and lots of nastiness going on in all of these scenes. And of course, over here is kind of in the background a depiction of heaven, and this is a depiction of hell. So that's so nice. And as I say, past artists commonly depicted scenes of hell, and it's almost like there was a kind of a competition between them all to see who could be the most gruesome about it, because the more you go through it, the more you just see these really common themes that keep picking up again, serpents twisted around people, and all sorts, all very dark, macabre scenes. So the references to chthonic deities, again, references beings associated with hell. Now, remember, the Anunnaki were referenced as being chthonic deities in the Oxford Companion to mythology, okay? So let's have a look at the way the word Anunnaki deconstructs etymologically, because this is just an absolute beauty. Most people say the word Anunnaki like the newest buzzword to seem like you've been reading the latest jazz on the internet and you know what you're talking about, and oh my goodness, you've got some intelligence. But what people don't realize is just the word Anunnaki is so revealing. It's got so many things going on with it. Okay, so let's do a little bit of breaking it down here. First of all, the An. We're talking about how significant An is, and of course A-N being the first letters of angel, as we've spoken about how significant angel is. Angels are dragons. The word angel comes from the word angui, or anguiem, which is a Latin reference to dragons or serpents. So An, all right? And of course the An backwards is N-A, all right? And then Ak is also a very important one. We're going to be dealing with the An and the Ak tonight because there's a lot of allegory to be examined here. First of all, the AK. The Ak, as we spoke about Orcus as well, the arc, orc, the K sound is very, very significant. And we spoke about some of the transliterations as well earlier. The word Anunnaki contains the root word ak, ark. As you can see, it is a very clear root of ark, being with a K or with a C. And then, of course, that goes on to further become the word arch. When we talk about arch, you talk about archon. I won't get into the archons now, but again, another symbolic reference to dragons, and of course, so archangel. And I've used specifically the picture of the ark here because I want to draw attention to the word ark. It's very, very significant. We're going to be dealing a bit more with the ark later on. As I said, archons and angels, archangels, very much the same, referencing the same entities, creatures, or beings, just in different contexts. And then, of course, there's the Ark of the Covenant. Far read as The Lost Ark, by far one of my favorite Indiana Jones movies. And the Ark of the Covenant is also known as the Ark of the Testimony, and it's commonly described in biblical texts and literature as a gold-covered wooden box or chest. And it's described in the book of Exodus as containing the 2 stone tablets of the 10 Commandments. This is a particularly beautiful painting by James Tisbett from the 1900s. I think it was painted in 1900, of Moses and Joshua bowing before the ark. Now, I want to point out just the shape of the ark because we're going to go into this in a moment. This shape is very familiar. What I want you to notice is just to follow the lines here. So you've got a square shape here, and then you've got something that comes over the top here, okay? Well, these are actually 2 cherubs with their wings coming forward. And as we know, cherubs and angels are symbols of the dragon. They're dragons. Human beings depicted with wings, such as fairies, as just symbolic allegory to the dragon. So what you got are these 2 things that come over the top there, and then the box underneath it. That's significant. We're going to get into that a bit more. Here we go. Here's another depiction of the Ark of the Covenant. And this one's got a depiction of Moses, and this is an engraving. What's interesting to notice is Moses here is depicted with horns. Dragon symbolism. Of course, Moses was of the royal dragon bloodline. But here's another depiction, a square box with this sort of arching bit that goes over the top. Now, there's various depictions of the Ark throughout history. These are some of the more common ones, which are said to be based upon the biblical scriptures. There are other depictions of the Ark which are not quite based on biblical scriptures, but show the Ark in different proportions. Here, the Ark looks very, very big. It looks human-sized if you compare it to the size of this man here. It looks about 6 feet high, whereas here, it's very much smaller and actually looks like a cathedral or a house or a castle or something. And here you got the same thing. Again, a much smaller Ark looking a bit like a house. You can check this is from a very old text, some with Latin writing here, calligraphic writing. And over here, this looks like some Arabic writing that's probably put on at some stage as well. So this is a very old text depicting the Ark. Now, this for me is one of the most compelling mysteries. And I do want to say thank you to one of my favorite people in the whole world, being Graham Hancock, for pointing this out. Okay, it's called the man bag mystery of the fish god. Graham Hancock cracked a brilliant joke. He pulls up this picture and he goes, now the question I have to ask here is, why is this guy carrying a man bag and wearing a fish on his head? Anyway, I thought that was hilarious, and this man bag depiction is, again, very significant. I'll go on to explain it, but in many depictions of dragons, angels, gods, deities, they are depicted carrying a box or a bag. Could this be the Ark of the Covenant? Okay, look at the shape, square with the thing over the top. Look, they come up everywhere. You find them in so many depictions. Here again, square box with the loop over the top. Okay, square box with the loop over the top. Of course, this is just a close-up version of this. And doesn't that look like a wristwatch? Doesn't that look like a wristwatch? Maybe it's a time traveler. Interesting. But that's basically what that looks like over there. A box with handles or something over the top. Here we go. Turns up again. All over the show. This is a depiction of the Anunnaki. Okay. The Sumerian bas reliefs. Yeah, again, the box, the handle, and again here, Dagon or Oannes, the fish god. So here you've got a bird-like countenance with the plumage, like the plumed or feathered serpent with the wings and human hands. And here you've got the fish-like countenance, but both in the same pose, almost identical, probably both holding, we still can't work out what that is. That could be symbolic of the fruit of the Garden of Eden, fruit of knowledge, pine cone representing the pineal gland. Many interpretations to what is in his hand here, but I'm more interested in that. That to me, my interpretation of this is that this very likely could be the Ark of the Covenant. That is what that is meant to represent. This particular sort of thing that the gods are carrying. And I call these sort of dragon symbolic talisman, and they come up all over the show, in mythology, in stories, in the Bible, and basically referencing holy relics or symbolically powerful relics that you had to be worthy to wield or to be able to use. And I'll go on to talk about more of those. But the Ark of the Covenant, of course, described as a weapon which could flatten cities. You know, the power of the gods literally in your hands. And this is kind of depicted here. Isn't that correct? You know, gods carry power in their hands, being the Ark. Anyway, again, it doesn't end. The symbolism comes up everywhere. So, of course, I'm going crazy, going, my God, Graham Hancock, why do I not know what this means? So I've gone everywhere looking at this over and over again, at these fishermen carrying man bags. This can't be a man bag. I mean, surely not. There has to be a much, much deeper symbolic allegory for it in order for them to have repeated the depiction of these bags over and over again, which is shaped like a box with a loop over the top. As I said, not unlike the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, now I will show you the Ark of the Covenant again just to prove the point of what I'm trying to say here. A box with the loop over the top. Have a look. Box, again, with the loop over the top. Okay, so the box with the loop over the top. Here again, box with the loop over the top. Box, box, loop over the top. Yeah, again, here, box, loop over the top, same here. And what these all are, okay, well, my interpretation is that this can be what became known as the Ark of the Covenant. And what these are symbolic talisman of the dragon gods, dragon rulers, dragon kings, dragon queens, special talisman bequeathed and sort of then interpreted into myth, fairy tale, story, fable in various ways that was to determine the worthiness. And for those who are familiar with the Marvel characters, this, of course, being Thor. Notice the wings on the side of his head, very common of dragon symbolism. We've dealt a lot with the wings on the side of the head. Medusa's got them, obviously. Hermes commonly wears them as well. But what determines, apart from this being a very obvious symbolic allegory of the dragon, so, of course, Thor is, of course, known as a god. The hammer that he wields, supposedly, you cannot wield it unless you are worthy, okay, as we said. It's again the story of Arthur and the sword and the stone. No one else could pull the sword from the stone except Arthur because he was worthy. They're special. There's something special, something different about them because they're not completely human. In fact, they're most likely a human-dragon hybrid, which are put into ruling positions or, in fact, are dragon gods. And these symbolic props, dragon bloodline symbolic props, turn up all over the show. We've covered off a lot of them in the past. Of course, Cinderella and the glass slipper being one of the more common ones. The Holy Grail or Cup of the Covenant, much like the Ark of the Covenant. We've spoken a lot about covenant contract that ties into Dragonology exploration as well. And of course, one we haven't covered before, which is the wand. And Harry Potter fits the description perfectly of someone who would be of that special dragon bloodline, being an orphan, as we've spoken about the word orphan and how significant it is in previous Dragonologies, but also the concept of the fairy godmother. And of course, you've got two very clear dragon roots here, being the god and the fairy, and normally depicted with a wand. And of course, the staff, the serpent staff, which you find sort of the god of medicine and healing, Asclepius, with the rod and the twisting serpent. And then, of course, Hermes, also commonly depicted with the caduceus, which has the wings at the top and the spiraling serpents around it. And, of course, the symbols of torch and fire. And, of course, the theme of fire is very prevalent because of hell. Hell is thought to be inferno and burning, you know. So torch and fire are very significant. And, of course, you find so many deities holding a torch. Of course, this is an example of the Statue of Liberty being of the deities holding a torch, sun goddess, the sun crown on. And then there's a story of Prometheus, who brings fire to humanity. And this is an amazing story because to me, the story of Prometheus bringing fire to humanity is the same story as the story of Genesis, where the serpent gives an apple to Eve. What does it represent? Light, enlightenment, knowledge. That's what fire brings. It gives light, enlightenment, knowledge. Okay? Perhaps the knowledge of energy, kinetic energy, perhaps, you know, the ability to boil things and create steam energy and things like that. So all of it ties into fire. It's knowledge. That is what it represents, just like the apple is representative of knowledge, which is why if you use an Apple computer, you'll normally see the symbol with one bite out of it. That is absolutely symbolic of the apple in the Garden of Eden, because this is what they're saying is this is your access point to the knowledge, you know, Apple computer. Very clever. But ultimately, the apple symbolism and in my interpretation, and giving fire to humanity is, giving the apple to Eve and giving the fire to humanity is basically one of the gods being very, very naughty, feeling very sorry for humanity, being such a slave species of the gods, and deciding, I'm going to give you a little bit of something to help you out of your mental slave construct. And that's what they did. And of course, for those who don't know, Prometheus was forever strung to a mountain and had his liver ripped out of his body again and again by an eagle. So that was his punishment for trying to help humanity by giving us fire. But of course, the theme of the torch and the fire, very common in dragonology, the O-R in torch, being a very common dragon root word. Now, going back to Anunnaki and looking at the symbolic etymological deconstruction, the word Anunnaki, of course, contains the root word Naki, which is the last syllable, last 2 syllables, Naki. And of course, Naki is etymologically cognizant with the word Nagi, which is the plural of Naga. Okay, a Naga, a female Naga is a Nagini. Okay, so Nagi is the male, Nagini is the female. So what are the Naga? Naga is a serpent-like god or deity from sort of Indian culture, Hindu culture, and commonly depicted, again, serpent-like deities, either serpents coming over the head. There's normally 7 of the heads that show over there, and the lower half is commonly depicted as serpent tails. Here's various other depictions of Nagas coming out of the east. This is one from Java in Indonesia, from Borobudur, I think. And this is one in Thailand, again, showing you how the Nagas come over the head of the Buddha. So Nagi, Nagini. So Nagi is many Nagas, Nagini, many female Nagas. Again, they're very clear to be specific about associating the male or the female, the yin and the yang. Nagini and Genie. The word Nagini contains the root word Gini, which comes from Jinn, because you've got the first word Jinn in there, Jinn with a J-I-N-N, because that Jinn transliterates into that Jinn, which of course comes from, as we've spoken about, the D-J-I-N-N, which is an Arabic classification for dragon, demon, angel, whatever you want to call it. But of course, we've spoken as well about the genie in the lamp. And of course, a lamp, much like the torch and the fire, is normally about light, illumination. All right, so it's the same allegories that keep coming back again and again. So the genie in the lamp. And the naked snake. Okay, let's have a look at the naked snake. This is one of my favorite paintings. It's of Lilith, and it's by John Collier, if I'm not mistaken, and shows Lilith being with a serpent wrapped around her, completely naked. And the word Anunnaki contains the root word nak, N-A-K, which is present in the words naked and snake. Oh my, just a coincidence, nothing to worry about. So you might notice that there's a lot of nudity in the classic arts of the grandmasters. Nudity is actually a symbol of the dragon. It's a serpentine symbol, because the word snake and naked are absolutely etymologically cognizant with each other. Now, the NA root of snake is present in the words narrate, narrative, and narrator. And of course, the dragon is commonly defined as the speaker, having given us our written and spoken languages as spells, right? That is when you get into the decoding of this language, you start to understand it's a program, it's a spell. The decoding construct is based upon spells, which is why if you read my book Spellbreaker, you'll understand how we break down the spells by deconstructing our language. And of course, the NA comes up, the root word NA comes up in the word navy or navi. Navi, which is reference to priest or prophet in certain ancient religions. And these priests and prophets worshipped dragon gods or deities, the Navi, they were called. And then, of course, the word Navi is cognizant with the word navy, which references the armed forces or fleet of a country operating largely on waters. And, of course, you've got words such as navigate and navigator, which stem from this root. But what's interesting to notice, again, is the ship theme, because the ship theme is absolutely symbolically significant. When we study dragonology, we've dealt with the ship being symbolically significant of contract, covenant, and of course you've got a lot of gods being depicted in heavenly ships that come down to earth, particularly in Egyptian mythology. Think of, again, we've spoken tonight about the Ark of Noah's Ark being a boat. So the marine theme, the ship theme ties into, again, the laws that bind us, admiralty, maritime law, the laws of commerce. And then the word navi or navy contains the root word avi, from which you get the word group, of course, avi, ava, and ave, eva, and eve. And of course, the V transliterates into the F, and the consonants translate, I beg your pardon, the vowel sounds transliterate with each other, as you can clearly see in this particular stream of word group. And the V commonly transliterates into the F, and this is very clear as we use examples of Volkswagen. Notice the V of Volkswagen is said with an F when you say it in the Dutch or Germanic languages. So what you have is this rooting, which becomes atha, which is the Arabic word for viper, okay? And now viper, of course, is a kind of serpent and is etymologically cognizant with the word vapor, which also comes from the same group as venom, Venus, virgin, veer, the veer bloodline, as in Guinevere, and werewolf or werewolf. Here we see how the V and the W transliterate from each other. Now, why vapor is significant is because, and I will just go back to this lovely depiction of the genie, you always notice there's like vapor. Okay, they appear and disappear. They seem to be able to materialize and evaporate or vaporize, which is clouds as well, or water vapor. And the word cloud, of course, is very clearly linked to dragon etymology. So you can see how all of these various symbolic allegories tie into each other through learning to understand how language flows from one another through transliteration to be intricately and be an integral, interwoven part of our reality, which basically determines the construct that we live in. Now, we spoke about over here. From viper, we get the word group venom, Venus, virgin, veer, and werewolf. Now we go on to venom. When we talk about venom, most people think of poisonous venom that comes from serpent fangs, and spoke about fangs as well as a very key dragon symbol. Venom is linked to the progeny of the rising star Venus, being the morning star indicative of Lucifer, the light bringer. The word spit contains the dragon root word spi, okay? And dragon, and what you find is that serpents tend to spit or project venom. So that's where the spi comes from, and you'll find the spi turns up in very significant dragon root words such as spirit, okay? Spy, which is symbolic of the eye symbolism. Spiral, of course, serpents always come in spirals. Speakers spoke about already. Dragons are the speakers. They give us our language and writing, and of course, spell, right? That's why this is such a significant root, and why the word spit is the word spit, because it's again referencing something the dragon does. And the spitting serpent is actually symbolic of ejaculation. The word ejaculate, again, coming from the Latin word eaculus, meaning serpent. And of course, the concept of sacred rape, we've dealt with previously in Dragonologies. The serpent bite is symbolic of sexual penetration or rape. And one of my favorite pictures to reference always is this depiction by Giulio Romano of Jupiter raping Olympus. Have a look at this lovely serpent tail. Oh, just beautiful, isn't it? Anyway. What is interesting when we're talking about venom, and normally talk about poisonous venom, and the word poison translates to the Dutch word giftig, gift, okay? And giftig contains the root word gift or gift, okay? This is, for sort means be careful. For soot, it's be careful or danger. because this is poison. You can see the skull and crossbones indicating, ooh, danger, stay away, be careful. Very significant, of course. Gift. Let's have a look at where we find the word gift. Well, we talk about gifts. We talk about giving a gift to somebody, okay? It is a votive offering because it's a sacrifice. You're not going to get that thing back, okay? It's just like when you take a votive offering to an altar to leave to whatever god. It's normally something that you plan to leave there and not retrieve. Therefore, it is a sacrifice, okay? And this is what the concept of gifts are. It's something that you give to somebody without the intention of retrieving. It is a gift. That is what a gift is. So it's interesting to notice that the word gift is actually the Dutch word for poison, again, showing you how the votive offering ties into Ophiolatry, which is dragon and serpent worship. As we said, the concept of giving a gift is symbolic of ritual sacrifice, being a votive offering, something that you do not intend to retrieve. We spoke a lot about votive offerings when I did that interview with Professor Sheila Coulson. You understand the whole process of the ritual. It's got to be something that's costly to you. It took a lot of effort to either get, make, or buy, and that you put somewhere as either an honor to something or somebody, and you don't plan to retrieve it. It's a costly, it's a sacrifice, okay? And ritual sacrifice is as old as humanity. As far back as you can trace religion, you can trace human sacrifice. And as you say, the concept of the gift is symbolic of ritual sacrifice being the votive offering. Even the concept of adorning the gift with wrapping, covering it, decorating it, again, symbolic adornment is a ritual act. And we, of course, have covered that off in previous Dragonologies too. Holy wine. Holy wine is a mixture of serpent venom and blood, which is commonly used in rituals as an ethnogenic substance. No jokes, when you start to read some of the Philip Gardner work, Sir Lawrence Gardner and all of that, and you start getting into some of the sort of serpent grail, holy grail, esoteric literature, they talk about how they used to mix serpent venom with wine and drink it in rituals, and it was supposed to be able to make you trip out and have communion with God and all sorts of things. And I'll read this over here. Ritual ethnogenic wine can also be found in the Etruscan religious practices of pre-Roman Italy, thought to be descended from Vedic Hindu beliefs. In the introduction of the book, The Sistine Secrets, Rabbi Benjamin Blech explains that the word Vatica comes from the Etruscan name for bitter grape used to make hallucinogenic wine, and that it was connected to an Etruscan goddess, also named Vatica, who was worshipped on a hilltop necropolis just outside Rome. Now, records show that a group of female oracles known as the Vaticenia were brought to this hill from abroad to tend to the gardens and brewed Vatica wine to help them communicate with goddess. This is where we get the term to reference a vat of wine. And to this day, the Latin word vaticina and Italian vaticinare actually mean prophecy, and are used to describe the area known or near Vatican Hill. It is Vatican Hill. The episcopal jurisdiction of this of the Catholic Church today is now known as the Holy See, but Vatican Hill was originally a place where this wine to the goddesses were made. Okay, and as we said, Vaticinia and Vaticinare actually mean prophecy. And that's significant because the supposed wine was supposed to give you the ability to commune with the gods and to see things, and, you know, like oracle wine or something. Ethnogenic qualities. Okay? Now, ethnogenic is a very interesting term. And first I want to deal with this Vaticinia or Vaticinare. Now, that's got Vatican in it, right? That's the word Vatican, referencing, obviously, Vatican City. The home of the Roman Catholic Church, known as the Holy See. But that actually means prophecy. Okay, now let's have a look at the word prophecy. We've spoken about prophet before. Prophet and prophecy have the same common dragon root word, Ophi. Ophi being the most common dragon root word next to or, O-R. And of course, ethnogenic substances. Ethnogenic substances, I just love this picture, and I'll point out a few things in a moment. But the word ethnogenic contains two very key, interesting dragon root words. Obviously, THE being the reference to God, as in theology, polema, theosophy, and all that kind of thing. And then, of course, jinn, which comes from jinn, or as the jinn, D-J-I-N-N. Jinn, G-I-N, D-O-N, the root word of dragon, etc., etc. So ethnogenic has two very key dragon root words in. And let's have a look at this particular picture, because I loved it. It says it, ethnogenic, anthropomorphic. Now, I love that, because the term anthropomorphic is generally a term when we're referencing something to do in dragonology, where human-like features are given to a non-human thing. And that's normally when we're looking at metamorphosis, or transition from one form to another, like a shapeshift. So I thought this was very interesting that we found the word morph, of course, being a key dragon root word, emphasizing shifting or shape-shifting. Very, very interesting. And of course, when we talk about being under the influence of alcohol, we're actually under the influence of the dragon. Alcoholic substances are often referenced as spirit. And don't forget, here we were talking about wine. Okay, again, this is rooted in ritual relating to dragonology, and it's no coincidence at all that you have alcoholic substances often referenced as a spirit, again with this dragon root word in. And as we say, the word SPI is indicative of spy, spiral, speak, spell, and of course the alcoholic substance known as gin is also rooted in dragon etymology, okay, being gin with a J-I-N-N, D-J-I-N-N, Gene, genie, or God as dragon. You see the God there. And that's it for tonight, folks. If anybody wants to catch up, please check out Conscious Consumer Network's archives at ccn.media. We've got over 1,900 shows that we've done over the last 2 years. They're all available there for you. So please, guys, do go check it out. And it's all there. We've got many other broadcasts throughout the week, and many fabulous broadcasters who contribute to the information, education, and knowledge provided to the public through this particular project. Of course, feel free to go back and watch seasons 1 and 2 if you have not done so already. Most of what I talk about here might seem pretty advanced or a bit like outside of people's boxes if they haven't gone through seasons 1 and 2. And to be honest with you, it will all make sense when you follow through the series, because each episode and each season builds upon what you have learned previously. For those of you wishing to do a crash course, feel free to download a copy of my book, Dragonology Spellbreaker, and you can get that at dragonology.info. The normal cost, of course, being €25, but you get a €5 discount if you use the discount code Dragonology S3. So Dragonology S3 for Dragonology Season 3. That's what the S stands for, season. And get the €5 discount from dragonology.info for the book Spellbreaker. And again, we spoke about, this is, of course, language creates spells. Deconstructing our language teaches us how to break the spells that bind and enslave us. Of course, check out the broadcast guide to see what other broadcasts are and when and who is with us and who is putting out what information. Most importantly, please do support the CCN Network Support Fund. This is a publicly funded network that is geared towards the betterment of humanity. We provide a platform to numerous projects across the world which are all humanitarian focused and creating massive changes in their community. And it wouldn't be able to function without the support of the community. So please, guys, do support the Network Support Fund for 2017 and keep Conscious Consumer Network on the air. You can check out the website. The various places that you need to reference are there. Of course, all live shows go through the live function here, which is broadcast on Facebook Live as well as through live stream. Check out the broadcast guide, as I said, to see when things are on. And of course, donate to us or become a monthly pledger and keep this network on the air. And as always, we thank you for supporting free and independent media. It's been a pleasure to be with you, and I'll see you next week. My name is Mel Ve. Take care. If we want to change the world, we must first change the media. Mainstream media exists for the purposes of indoctrination and manipulation of public perception. The world of free and independent media is growing, and with the upsurge in information now available in the public domain, it has never been easier to access free and independent media. The exploration of this information resulted in an experimental project which would provide a fully supported space for researchers, whistleblowers, and seekers of all kinds to express themselves and educate the world. On the 1st of January 2015, Conscious Consumer Network was launched to the world. Nobody thought we would make it this far, but CCN is the longest running free and independent media network of its kind. CCN is a unique collaboration of hearts and souls, bringing you information from different perspectives to educate and inform. Since we started CCN, we have had only one desire: the pursuit of a free, fair, just, sustainable world, and this has not changed. Having overcome many challenges over the last 2 years, CCN is here to stay, and we've got great things lined up for 2017. Help keep CCN on the air by supporting the 2017 Network Support Fund.